This is Defenders Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the finale of Loki, episode 6, for all time, always.
There's only one way this can go.
Then why are we here?
Oh, come on. No, you can't get to the end until you've been changed by the journey. This stuff, it needs to happen to get us all in the right mindset to finish the quest.
Right.
Right.
So it's all a game. It's all a manipulation.
Interesting that your head would go to that. Sylvie! You think you can trust this guy?
Don't listen to him.
Don't listen to him. Do you think you're even capable of trusting anyone at all?
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the finale of Loki Season 1. For all time, always. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
And standing at the edge of time, it is me, your final host, John. Welcome, fellow Defenders, to this final episode in Season 1 of Loki. Yes, we have a Season 2.
I know, but
It was. So was the ending.
Yep.
But we'll get onto that.
Absolutely, and so was all the rest of the episode. I think a bit of a shocker, a bit of a surprise of an episode. A big shocker really that season 2 was coming, because I think I'd completely discounted it earlier on this season, because the rumors of a season 2 started when filming was going on for season 1 last year. When they were finishing it post-COVID, these sudden rumors came out that season 2 was happening, but it turns out to be entirely accurate, that this story will continue in the future of Loki, its own TV show, and also apparently now in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, also in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Yep.
And possibly across the entire rest of the MCU in Phase 4. But we will discuss all of that as we go into the episode, and hopefully have some kind of hints as where we think this might be going.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I was shocked. Yes, that is a good... I hadn't heard the rumours. So this, for me, was like, say what now? Okay then. Cool. Okay. That's an ending. So we will definitely get into that. But much like the multiverse, we have talked about other things in the TV podcast industry's multiverse. We did record our discussion on Black Widow, which you can pop onto any of the channels where you listen to us, and you can get that there. So go on and check that out. It was a rip-roaring, Russian-sounding discussion. You know you want to hear me do a Russian accent, and I'm not going to do it here. You have to go to the podcast and listen to it.
Excellent. He might not also do it there, but he did try.
I attempted it. Hey, that's close enough. But as always, we are continuing our discussion of the Bad Batch. We will be recording this week's episode tomorrow, but you can always just drop back if you want to. Now that Loki's over, if you need something to catch up on, why not check out The Bad Batch?
Yeah.
We've been going weekly on it, and it is not bad at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get all of those episodes on tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can find the podcast by searching tvpodcastindustries.com, wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of shows we've covered, did you guys see the Emmy nominations this week? 23 nominations for WandaVision, 5 nominations for Falcon the Winter Soldier, 5 nominations for The Boys, and 18 nominations for Lovecraft Country, 4 of the biggest shows we cover on this podcast.
Yeah. Excellent stuff.
We do have good taste. We pick only the best.
Well, we pick the
are
shows.
The men from Del Monte.
Well, we pick the shows we hope our listeners enjoy and we'll enjoy, and it seems like the Emmy Academy enjoyed them too, right?
Yes.
Well, that's it. We provide the canned podcast for your enjoyment. You can open up whenever you want to and lovingly sort of digest the succulent sweet fruit within.
That was a Man from Del Monte reference. I was wondering what the can was
Yes,
about.
I was. That took me a second. For any of our international listeners, the Man from Del Monte and Del Monte were canned tinned fruits in syrup or their own juice.
Oh.
And they were gorgeous.
They were.
But I feel they were very much a British Isles thing, but I'm not quite sure.
Be.
So
Yeah. It was an ad from the 80s.
yes, and it was
Selling,
the Man from
yeah,
Del Monte.
canned
He
fruit.
says yes.
It's like we were still in the Cold War. Nuclear Armageddon could have happened at any moment, but as long as you had your tinned pineapple and peaches, you were good to go.
Yeah, it's something to go into your bunker. Exactly. We will be finishing off our Loki coverage. This episode is the final episode of Loki season 1, but we will obviously be back with our finale wrap-up episode next week. Hopefully, I think there is going to be a making of episode, as they've been doing with each of the MCU shows, out next week, which we'll discuss. We'll also wrap up our pub quiz with our final answers for the pub quiz, and give away the goodies that we have for Loki as well. If you want to enter the pub quiz, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can also email us there with any thoughts you have on the full series of Loki. Let's get into our discussion about this final episode. For all time, always, head writer of the show, Michael Waldron, takes on writing duties for this episode, as we generally see on finale episodes, and is joined by Eric Martin, who we've spoken about earlier on in the season. He's written a couple episodes of this show as well. Every episode of the season directed by Kate Herron as well. A really good vision for this show. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the finale of Loki season 1?
Sure. After taking control of the Guardian Alioth, Sylvie and Loki arrive at the Citadel at the edge of time. The creator of the Time Variance Authority resides inside, but they are greeted by a very cheery Miss Minutes. Her true boss, He Who Remains, is willing to give Loki and Sylvie everything they desire, from victory at the Battle of New York and the Infinity Gauntlet for Loki to a life filled with happy memories for Sylvie. They can both even live in the same timeline. All they have to do is listen to him. Meanwhile, back at the TVA, while Mobius and Hunter B-15 reveal the truth to the other Minutemen, Judge Renslayer has been given instructions from He Who Remains, and she escapes through a time portal to find the one who has free will. Back at the edge of time, He Who Remains invites Loki and Sylvie to talk, but Sylvie tries to kill him at every opportunity. He is able to dodge every attack and explains that he knows everything that will happen in their meeting. He Who Remains informs them that he discovered a way to connect with other universes and the many variants of him. These variants try to work together to solve the world's issues, but the good versions of him also existed along with the many bad versions of him. The evil versions try to exploit their connections and knowledge to conquer the multiverse, and so began the multiversal war. Realizing this war would destroy everything, He Who Remains weaponized Alioth and established the efficient Time Variance Authority and its bureaucracy to remove all timelines that led to the multiversal war, leaving him alone in the Citadel at the edge of time. But he's tired, and he offers Sylvie and Loki the opportunity to continue his work to preserve the multiversal harmony, or they can plunge the universes into catastrophe and chaos if they choose to end him. Loki seems willing to accept the offer, but Sylvie kisses him and sends him through a time portal. Finally, Sylvie achieves her revenge, kills the founder, and awaits the arrival of thousands of his variants and the multiversal war. As Loki returns to the TVA, he soon realizes that no one knows who he is. Both B-15 and Mobius are confused about who he is, and this TVA has someone else very much in charge.
Applause, I think, for for you, John, there, for getting all that together into one synopsis. We're done here, right? That's kind of the story.
Yep.
We talk about Basil exposition quite a lot. This was very Basil exposition-y, to be honest, but in a good way. I think the tension of that, almost that stage scene of them sat in He Who Remains' office, as the edge of time is out through the window behind him, and that it was like that sort of stage play. We say that quite often, sometimes there's this moment of inspiration. Yes, there's a little bit of jumping back to the TVA and so on, but when the writers are able to sort of provide that condensed single scene that just kind of is pretty magical, really, then I think it's just excellent stuff, really.
Yeah. Kicking off the episode, before we get into discussing the individual variants, kicking off the episode, I loved the change to the Loki titles. The normal Marvel Universe logo now replaced with dialogue from each of the characters as it cycles through, and then starting to bring in real world people. We hear Greta Thunberg saying her famous speech. We hear Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
We hear Vision is in there from WandaVision. Not a real life character, but he was in WandaVision.
There's Neil Armstrong as well.
Neil Armstrong's in there. Yeah, I loved how this is effectively a great way of setting up the timelines themselves. The camera effectively panning back as we enter the episode to this sacred timeline that's circling this citadel on the edge of time, kind of showing how much is involved in this timeline, I suppose. This is the entirety of human existence.
I thought something was wrong. I thought I know it sounds stupid. I thought it was my equipment because I thought for a second, I was like, oh no, they've got a different channel for the music. And this is the first ever time. I was like, no, something's wrong with my speakers. And I was like,
It's a choice.
That is the best summary of this episode. Quite a choice.
Okay.
It's the 12 Angry Men, as you said, it's a stage play. It's a single room to a majority, it's a single room play as your final season finale, where people thought it was the series finale. And that's the thing. Do you remember in Dodgeball where you have, that's a bold move, Cotton?
Right.
Like, that's all I was saying. And I'll give a bit of inside baseball. I watched the episode last night and straight away started texting the lads going, well, and I had to discuss it with you two over text for a second to be able to articulate what my thought process was, because it's just such we know Disney is bold, but this was bold. Like,
Disney has been accused many times of not being bold with the MCU, so I think this is one that will shut people down.
Yes.
This choice for what they did with this finale episode will shut down that concept of, once the MCU joined Disney, they made no choices, they just wanted to make money. This show was not that, definitely. Just to kind of say that when Chris was texting, I had no idea whether he liked or disliked the episode.
I was very cagey about that.
Nothing given at all. Even when I said I really enjoyed this episode, I got nothing back from Chris as to whether he liked it or not. So we will find out in as we go through this discussion of this episode. Let's get into our variant number one, because the most important character, I suppose, introduced in the universe here really is He Who Remains. Let's talk about him up front. Played by Jonathan Majors, who we covered on the excellent Lovecraft Country, a very adult horror and science fiction show. Great to see him brought into the universe here. We heard about his casting before. He's been cast in the role for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania. He has been called out as Kang the Conqueror in that, playing a comic book character. A very different version possibly of the one we see here, but he's kind of exposition guy, but wow, can Jonathan Majors act. I think he sells every single line he has here. Just that idea that he is someone of pretty big intelligence to do what he did at the start, but creating this, border between multiple universes, being able to work together with other scientists to try and solve problems, the kind of distraught side of losing control of that when other variants of himself have turned up and they're more powerful, more evil, more hell-bent on destruction. Then this concept that he is just, at this point, he's been trying to fix the timeline for thousands of years and he's just tired and wants somebody else to take over. I think he just has a great jitter about him. He seems really excited to see other people here as well when he's talking to Sylvie and Loki. And he seems even more excited to see what happens after the point of the universe that he doesn't know. So he has his books, which telling him exactly what's happening in this meeting. And then those books run out and he doesn't know what happens afterwards. And he genuinely seems intrigued, whatever way it goes. He's intrigued to see what happens. Chris, what did you think of this?
I loved Jonathan Majors.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, it was like he was chewing the scenery, but I know sometimes that can come off as a negative. It wasn't in this. He was just so charismatic. He was just the character of He Who Remains was just partially because we were like, who is this?
Exactly.
But also just the take, if you want to call it that. It was almost childlike, but not, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So there's parts where he was jumping onto the chair, and it's that he was very much the benevolent character and just showing all these different takes. And what I really loved about this was this would, if you watch any other kind of Nerdist, IGN, any other kind of podcast, everyone was like, there's no way they'll bring this character in. It's way too early. He's in Quantum Mania. There's he was essentially the Mephisto that we had talked about.
Kind of.
Because no one thought he was going to do this. Everyone thought it was going to be. And to be fair, we didn't get Kang. And
Exactly.
That's the one key bit. At this point in time, he was not Kang the Conqueror. He was He Who Remains.
The actor Jonathan Majors is playing the character He Who Remains, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but he is describing effectively. I mean, I know what you're saying. I get it. But there is the moment where he's asking Sylvie and Loki, what are you afraid of? And he's like, me? And he says, I've been known as a ruler, a conqueror, He Who Remains, and a jerk, which I thought was actually hilarious. But I mean, it is ultimately a variant, because he does say that, she still calls me that, referring to Miss Minute as the person that calls him He Who Remains. So he doesn't actually give his name here.
Yeah, exactly.
But ultimately, in the scheme of what he describes here about his story, he is a variant of this person moving through time, whether good or evil.
He's the last variant.
He is, yes.
Of this character. It's very convoluted, but essentially it is now he was the last variant. He was the one pruning to ensure that he was the only ever variant. And now that all changes.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. Like, he has become the supreme variant. The same way throughout the show, we've had this kind of commentary about Loki thinking that he's the supreme variant, but actually when he meets other Lokis, some of them are more intelligent than him, some of them are better at other things than he is. But this He Who Remains is the supreme variant of this character. There was a great comment I saw earlier on this week about Jonathan Majors that his agent must be really happy, because effectively his statement here is that he can now appear anywhere as one of the 1,000 variants of his character, and they don't have to act the same way at all. He could just go into a role and act completely different every single time, and we will take it as given that this is a version of He Who Remains. Great for his agent.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think that's the really great thing here in this whole scene with He Who Remains, is just that, we get his story finding the stacked universes, and about the multiversal war, but then you get the story, as he says, it's ultimately the same as the one that the Timekeeper said about preserving a timeline.
Yep.
And the whole reason. And you get that element of it as well then, the one we already know effectively. And that offer to Sylvie and Loki is that, well, you can take on my mantle because, quite frankly, I'm knackered, with having done this for, such a long, long time. And you control the TVA, but he says, you can tell them whatever you want to make them feel happy about it. Yep. And it comes to this really nice, element that he says that, I'm not good, I'm not bad, I do bad things for a good reason. And, this is the time for you to run the whole thing, to control the TVA, or, you can kill me and not take it up, and we'll see the chaos that arrives as a result of that. I mean, like, that's what's so great about his last line to Sylvie, which is "see you soon," which is really good, because his other variants will be unleashed by this, and they
are.
have this, they have this knowledge of the multiverse. They know about all of this. And, I love Jonathan Majors here. Mm-hmm. That kooky portrayal of kind of a man stuck in a box, for so long, doing his thing, but for good reasons, I thought was really, really good. I think initially I was like, ooh, because when the elevator door opened, for me, I was like, it's Kang. Mm-hmm. Wow. They've done it. And I think it's just the fact that I wasn't expecting him to be the big bad. I thought He Who Remains, it's a nice little touch actually, because I think, Derek, you mentioned it, is that everyone's theory is ultimately right here. There is He Who Remains, there is Kang, and of course, in the end, it's Sylvie left in that room on her own, King
So
Loki.
it's a variant of King Loki, yeah.
And so everyone's there. But I was just thinking, 'cause I've got this particular view on Kang, and I was like, oh, he's playing this really weird. Mm-hmm. And then obviously it comes out with his story and so on, and you're like, then you see the absolute genius of Jonathan Majors doing his thing here on this stage play with Tom Hiddleston and Sophia Di Martino. It was just so good. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. You could sense the fun that he was having, and I loved how it contrasted with Sylvie, who, you see her nervous energy, because this is what she's been working towards, and then the doors just open. I thought that was a really nice touch. Yeah. And then just her anger, and he's kind of so chilled because he knows what's coming. I think it was very much like of contrasts as well, because that moment where you get a really great change in the music, where it starts to rumble up as that threshold is crossed where he doesn't know what will happen. And he's the only one realizing that sat at his desk. Yeah. I thought that was just awesome. I thought that was really, really well done, and how he portrayed that was superb.
Yeah. One little one I wanted to throw out, which was really interesting, was as the Lokis are entering his the initial the chambers before they actually go up in the elevator and we're first introduced to, there's statues of the timekeepers. Mm-hmm. There's 3 statues up and 1 down.
Yeah,
smashed.
Yeah, I spotted that as well.
Very interested to see what they're going to do with that, because so comic book lore, He Who Remains was one of the who is a variant of, or is a version, but we'll call him variant, a variant of Kang, worked with the Timekeepers and created the Time Stoppers and the Timekeepers. Mm-hmm. And was theoretically the fourth Timekeeper. Yeah. So I'm so interested to see if that smashed one was him. It's very interesting to see.
It must be.
Is it him, or was there Timekeepers, or is it a full figment of his kind of like, well, in order to create this autocratic bureaucracy of the TVA, he created the Timekeepers as a construct.
The only reason I would think that it's him is because it dramatically makes sense for the show, because the show ends with the statue of Jonathan Majors at the end of the show.
Yes.
If you'd seen the statue of Jonathan Majors there, knowing that he's been cast as Kang in a future movie, if you saw it the minute that Loki and Sylvie arrived, that just bursts all the tension for the episode.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I think that's the reason why that particular one was smashed. But it does make me question whether the other 3 Timekeepers did exist at one point. Were they 3 other Kangs that worked with this guy that ended off being He Who Remains, and all 4 of them worked together? They were all the good ones that were trying to solve everything going on in the universe, and he had to kill them to stop the multiversal war. We have now got our answer as to what happened to the original Timekeepers.
Yep.
He says that he had to destroy every variant of himself to get him to this point. And that's when he leaves the choice with Loki and Sylvie, that moment when he makes that comment to them, basically, that doesn't affect me what you do. Either you kill me and continue to take care of the timeline and everything goes on exactly as it is right now and the timeline's taken care of, or you kill me and stop managing the timeline, the multiversal war comes back and I'll be right back here again in exactly the same situation. So it doesn't make a difference to me. I'm just tired dealing with it for a while.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I'll make an interesting comparison. So for any of our listeners who watch Rick and Morty, there's the Council of Ricks.
Mm-hmm.
So very much what's being discussed with this, and when he's explaining the different variants working together, is the Council of Kang.
Yeah.
And the reason some of the Timekeepers look like dogs and lizards and things like that is because in that universe, we look like a dog or a lizard and stuff. So they're variants of Kang that look like that.
Yeah, so they did a good setup then by doing episode 5 where we had all the variant Lokis, including Alligator Loki, to set up the fact that there are so many different variants.
Yep.
Doesn't matter about skin color, doesn't matter about race, doesn't matter about species. There's a variant out there in a multiverse that looks different to the one that's sitting right in front of you here. But so I love that now, thinking back on the series itself, all of it was set up for this massive reveal, which will affect and impact the MCU going forward. We've talked a lot about Jonathan Majors there, but is there anything else that you want to talk about in that opening section or the opening description of everything that's happened in this 1,000 years up to this date?
Just 3 really quick things. Firstly, just shout out the castle or the Citadel at the edge of time. Looked cool as hell.
Stunning.
Really, really good. And I was thinking it was going to be King Loki because I saw there was like the green sort of color around the rock. And I was like, oh, okay. Is that like, thematic or whatever? And it was kind of like, okay, it wasn't, but like, I just thought that looked amazing. As well as the inside. And it was also, I guess it was just the build up, but the room before the 4 statues or the 3 and the destroyed 4th, the one before that, after they've just entered in, the statues seemed to be hooded, which just reminded me of the silhouette of Sylvie right at the start where we see her. And I was thinking, oh, okay. So that was giving me more ideas that it was Loki. And then, okay, the elevator opened. And then just Miss Minute as well arriving, just because it looks so different to the surroundings. This very kind of, the stone, the darkness, the windows, the Citadel. And then you have this projection of an AI effectively of Miss Minute. But I love the look. Like there was almost like a little evil, the evil eye look, that she did here where, she's offering Loki and Sylvie their, I guess, wildest fantasies from their life before they got pruned and picked up by the TVA. And it's like, no. And she's like, the look in her eyes as she says, sure you do. Good luck with that, as they're about to head off, to confront He Who Remains. And so I like that. And I think it's also that if they had taken that, I guess He Who Remains would remain alive ultimately and continue doing the work. Because that was the other thing. I mean, there was this deal that they out and out refused. Yeah. But this was a deal where they could effectively leave him alone. But ultimately he knows what's happening. Exactly. So I guess, yes, his true offer is the one that he deals to them in his office.
Yeah, the offer is he's offering them everything they could possibly want, knowing that they're going to say no anyway. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if he gives an offer to Loki to have an Infinity Gauntlet that will destroy the galaxy. He knows Loki and Sylvie will say no to that and move on. So he offers everything. Like, can you imagine?
He really does.
Like the idea that Loki can win the Battle of New York, kill Thanos, and get an Infinity Gauntlet, and Loki still turns that down. Well, there's nothing else more that could be offered. So I think He Who Remains was having a bit of a joke there as to how much was being offered. So.
Yeah, no, completely. My final point before we move on is the amazing setup this is. Because just background, this character is a Fantastic Four villain. He's an Avengers villain. He's a general across the multiverse, across the comic book. He's fought Doctor Strange. He's fought, you name the hero, Iron Man. Like, he's done them all. Like, it's across all of them. So, the first introduction of this character is in a Disney Plus show. Yep. Shows me the quality and the
That's the seriousness of their intent.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect way of putting it. Yeah. The intent here is like, we're going to introduce you to one of the biggest, potentially the next 2 phases worth of Thanos. Yeah. That level of a bad guy. Yeah. To a degree. In the final episode of the Loki show. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whew. So when that all kind of came together, we know Fantastic Four is coming. We know he's going to be in Quantumania. This has me going, Jonathan Majors is probably going to pop up in some form in Doctor Strange and potentially Spider-Man. And, like, who knows where else now?
Well, it has implications because, and the saying, I'm expecting, or I have a feeling that Loki will pop up in Doctor Strange as well. Yeah. It just makes sense because this is really kind of tied everything together. You know, Doctor Strange is in Spider-Man, and so we're with Doc Ock in there, and as well with Electro rumored to be in there as well. Again, different timelines all coming in here. We definitely know Kang will be introduced as Kang the Conqueror, I guess, in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
That's almost off the table for me now. I believe they've introduced him here as He Who Remains, and every version we see from now on could be Kang. It could be another version of the character. Yeah. So Jonathan Majors can walk in the background in the Hawkeye TV show and just happen to be a scientist they speak to and not have a big implication. But what's even better for me is when we were kids, Kang the Conqueror was a big joke of a character. He'd arrive from the future and go, don't step on that bug or you're going to kill all life on future planets. They've made a great introduction to this character. Yeah. That was an example. That wasn't a specific comic book, but he was a bit of a joke when we were kids. They've made him a really interesting character. They've done great jobs more recently in comic books, but it's a great introduction. Let's move on to Variant 2. That is Jonathan Majors, as we say, nominated for his show, Lovecraft Country, for being a central character on there. Another wonderful character in Loki, played by an actress, Wunmi Masaku, from Lovecraft Country, is Hunter B-15. Let's move on to what she's doing, in these moments. We don't spend much time outside of the Citadel at the end of time, but we do spend a little bit of time with Hunter B-15, bringing agents to meet the real Judge Renslayer back in 2018. I really like this because it feels like this isn't the only person she's done this to. It feels like she's just waiting in the room of Judge Renslayer going, here she is. Let's see if his mind cracks and then let's tell him the truth about what's happening to the TVA. This is the first person we see her do this to is Judge Renslayer's right-hand man, the person that's been right behind her back the whole time, the person that pruned Mobius from the TVA in the future. So quite a big get, I suppose, as the first person turned for her. But this seems to be her mission now, is freeing all of the TVA agents from that hold that's been on them for the whole time. They didn't know there were variants. They didn't know about this history. They didn't know what was going on. And just that simple reveal of, hey, this is the person who's been giving you all your orders for all these years. And look at her here in a school teacher or a school principal back in normal days. Let me explain it to you.
Yeah, I did enjoy this. This gave us the explanation of the pen, of the overall what this meant, this Ohio State pen. There were so many rumors about Molecule Man and who knows whatever, and ideas, and that's what I love about the show, the theories. But anyway, it was such an interesting thing because it's like the futility of it was just so much fun to see. It was just great to see that they overall, like, B-15 was like, no, look, here is your Judge Renslayer. And she's like, who's Judge Renslayer? I am such and such. And it was interesting that it was back in 2018. So that's what the significance of that event in 2018 is. I'm curious to see what it was. Someone will figure it out in one of the Easter eggs and go, well, in the MCU in 2018, this happened, and this is what the variant, the split was.
I haven't seen Easter eggs or anything like that, but I think it's just simply saying pre-snap, right? It's setting the situation pre-snap.
Oh, there you go.
So that we don't interfere with what else is going on. We've interfered with enough of the multiverse and enough of the MCU. So let's not mess with it too much more, by setting it in 2023 or whatever year is happening. Let's just put it before then and we're grand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But yeah, look, it was good. And I do love B-15.
Yeah,
she's a fantastic actress.
Underused in the show, but knowing that we have a season 2 now, at least we know that we'll have Wunmi Mosaku back.
Yes.
An excellent actress. Had some great moments in this season, but I definitely want to see more of her as we go into the rest of the season. But speaking of Renslayer and the original version of her, let's move on to Variant 3, because Renslayer escapes. We see how she gets out of the TVA. She's in a reasonably bad situation. Mobius kind of coming back to take revenge after he was pruned and sent off to the void. And she seems to have gotten some more information from Miss Minutes. Miss Minutes saying she tried to go off and find those files that she was looking for, but decided on the basis of some direction from He Who Remains that there's some more important information that she needs, and uploads that to the Tempad, giving Renslayer a reason to escape. So Renslayer being quite heavily tied into the end of this episode, I think.
Yes,
definitely. Yeah, and probably season 2 as well. I thought with Renslayer leaving, I mean, she's not around for very long, but I'm glad that her and Mobius kind of reunited, so to speak, in that way. And I think, I love that she's still very adamant that, the TVA has a role, that it's crucial. And in some ways, I think it chimed with what, He Who Remains said as well. Yeah. There's a nice kind of link there to what He Who Remains says and Renslayer here. And given that he's given her this reading, to go off, as she escapes through, a Tempad out of the TVA to find the one person with free will. So, I mean, I guess there's a fair number of, different Marvel characters that could be that. I mean, I was trying to think who could be, but I just think I'm too burdened by Doctor Strange knowledge because I mean, you have Celestials and you've got with the Eternals.
Yeah,
you've got
interesting,
which is potential way that they could go. You've got Infinity, so it's like pretty free will. And you've got the Watcher. There's all these different types of, and maybe there's some more obvious, but that's what I was just kind of really, throwing it, at that moment. And so I really like that.
Okay. That's very different what I thought. I thought it was effectively that He Who Remains was sending back kind of the information, the key to what he discovered to Renslayer to kind of bring it to himself. So that they could kickstart the whole process again. She's going to arrive with 2 Jonathan Majors and go, here you go, try this experiment. And then it kickstarts the whole circle again.
Yeah, it could be that as well. But I guess I was just I was thinking of someone with absolute free will. And I guess because the Eternals are coming up, I was thinking Celestials.
Yeah.
Because they effectively are outside of all of that, that could be asked to intervene. There's a lot of stories where we've, Doctor Strange has had to pop over to a Celestial to get him out of a bit of trouble.
True.
Or, even just maybe the Watchers, just because they literally do not intervene at all and just watch that because of that. But is that free will? I don't know. Let's not get into a philosophical debate as such, but I was just thinking, but their free will is that they won't get involved. And, after that, they do get involved ultimately. Yeah. I mean, so they're a bit,
Sometimes.
But again,
I see that in What If coming up.
Yeah. I mean, it was just more that bigger sort of out of the bounds of this, I guess. I think the first phases of MCU, you know, Thor was that because he was a god. He was that, but then there was the Titan. Now we're getting the Eternals. It's like, there's like a scale up, I think, happening.
Maybe. Yeah, I know she says there's only one person that can have free will, and that's who's in control, effectively.
Yeah.
So, unless she's going to Florida to maybe find a whale.
Yeah, it's true.
No, that's Free Willy, isn't it?
Yeah, that was. I took it as that. It was like whoever's in control has the free will, and that's who she's going to find free will. That person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think based on the ending, she potentially finds that person because the statue is that person who's in control, that free will, and should probably mention Judge Renslayer is a love interest of Kang the Conqueror.
In the comics.
In the comic books. Yeah. So my assumption being that she may have gone back in time, created a fork in one of the forks where she has interacted with He Who Remains at an early stage and go, you don't need all three of them. You are the one who remains. You are the head of the TVA. Yeah. This is the thing. And you have the organization to do the free will. So when we get back, because there's a question of like, when Sylvie, and we'll get into that now, so when Sylvie kicks Loki through and to the ending, is it an altered universe or like where are we going into this? I think it's still the same universe, quote unquote. It hasn't gone multiverse just yet. It's been changed by Judge Renslayer at a previous point in time.
Yep, that's a really good thought. Yeah, let's talk about Variant 4 then. The choice of Sylvie. The decision is left with them from He Who Remains. Loki seems kind of interested in it. I kind of like the, it's almost inferred that comment from He Who Remains saying, I have to do bad things sometimes to do kind of the greater good. And Loki's going, I can do that. Yeah. I can do bad things sometimes for the greater good. I justify my bad things quite often. But he seems like he's going to go along with it. And then we finally get the kiss between Sylvie and Loki.
The kiss heard around the world on Twitter. I thought this was fun for me. This was to a degree. We get a fantastic battle between the two Lokis again, which we only got touches of across the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
And this was a good one, and it very much set up the distinction between Sylvie and our Loki. In terms of he's like, no, like the greater good, think about it, and very much it's vengeance versus the greater good. The perceived or the suggested greater good control, to resume that control. And I did like the moral conundrum, put in place here. I'm not against the kiss. I'm not against the love interest. I think it was it makes sense in terms of the character and the story and the development.
But it was a ruse, wasn't it? I mean, I know, like, obviously with what happened with the Nexus event that it could, and there's definitely feelings, but I mean, ultimately she kissed him in order to push him back through and get him out of there.
Yeah, that's what I was questioning.
That's how I saw it, because
she's a Loki.
There's a betrayal now, and she certainly pushed him, unless it was someone else, but I don't see how, unless it was Kang, I guess, or He Who Remains. I just assumed it was. I mean, firstly, I just was amazed that his head wasn't chopped off with a sword anyway. So there was part of me kind of processing that, to be honest. But then, they come together, but it is clear she's playing on that to stop the fighting. And it might just be that, to stop the fighting, so that she can take her choice that she's made she doesn't want to debate it.
Yeah, yeah. I like how He Who Remains undercuts the two of them in their relationship as well. Where he's kind of saying, "Could you ever not betray someone to Loki?" And then saying to her, "Could you ever trust him?" Like, so the two of you can rule together in the same timeline. You can have everything you want effectively by being here and taking over my job. But could you trust her and could she trust you? Or which one of you will backstab first? And he's effectively setting this up.
Yeah, he does.
She does backstab.
He sows the seeds of this in the sense that, she asks Loki why he can't see this in the same way as her. And, very just before he gets pushed through that, the tempad door, it's, you can't trust me and I can't be trusted, which is exactly the setup of He Who Remains has done, in that moment. In earlier on in his office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I really enjoyed this. I honestly didn't expect the portrayal. I didn't. It was interesting to see. And again, it's not, well, we say a portrayal. I don't know if it was. It was, Sylvie has a mission. She has had a single goal since she was a child.
Yeah.
But Loki may see it as a betrayal. It's not necessarily that she's doing a betrayal. I just feel for her, I think the investment, because she was plucked as a child.
Yeah.
Has fought since a child. I mean, she says, I was born before you. I was plucked from the timeline before you were born, is what she says. And
he's
been on
1,000
the run.
years old, isn't he? He's a proper god, effectively. He's been around for a very long time. So she's been around even longer than that, and been traveling, hiding all on her own. So she is there for revenge. Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm so, not what I was expecting. And it did not, the He Who Remains comment, as you guys put it earlier, it's like, see you soon, as the blade is, it wasn't even vicious or...
No.
It was to sink in. And you could have taken away very much from that by having an almost a beheading. You could have had a violent death and just the anger, and that would have detracted from the scene completely. So the choice of just, I hate to say, sliding the blade in is just fantastic. It was cleverly done. It really was.
You need his reaction, his moment of, oh, this is how it ends.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, that's fine. I'll be back. Yeah. If I'm going to be back, I'll be back, basically. Because he doesn't trust that Sylvie's going to protect that sacred timeline, effectively, that he's created, I think, is the indication. Because we don't get to see a resolution with that. We don't get to see her sitting in the chair and making any decisions or taking over the TVA or anything like that. We simply get her sitting there having struck revenge and pushing Loki back out through the time door, which is our final variant, Loki returning to the TVA. I have a question on this. Mm-hmm. Is it important that it was the piece of equipment that He Who Remains has that Sylvie used to create the time door? Remember, he was traveling back and forth, or at least he was communicating back and forth between multiverses. Is it important that she created a time door using his device? Is it still possible that Loki has traveled across to another verse, to another one of the universes, effectively? Is it possibly that's what's happened here? That's why that's why nobody understands him. Nobody knows who he is because he's traveled across a universe rather than just through time.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't got my head around it yet because, I mean, the whole thing from, this is about multiverses. This is about, it is time and space, but it's different spaces where time runs. And everything from the end game was the idea that it's new time that's created, and it's the same with this branching, that timeline still remains. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. It could, to me, it's wait and see. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is either going to be, as Chris said, which I think is a really good idea. Yeah. It's just whether season 2 wants to be that loop of what we've got already or do something else. And, there's a number of films that have come out since then. And so they've got to at least, I guess, be referential to that in some way. So we'll see how the movies go, and so on. Renslayer's done this event back in time on the timeline that is considered sacred. And if she's wanting to protect that, she wouldn't do it to any other timeline.
Yep.
And so, he's gone back to the TVA where something's changed, but has preserved the sacredness of the timeline. Or it's not just a tempad, it's a tem and space pad, effectively, that can move through. And that's the thing, because the only tempad that is there is the one worn by Kang.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my theory, to a degree, is that this will film in 2022 with a release in 2023.
Maybe.
As a potential series episode. And then, yes, you've got that point. You've got Multiverse of Madness. You'll have, at some point, either pre or post, you'll have probably around the same time, you'll have Quantum Mania. And I think it's all going to tie to a degree at that point. I am so interested to see how they approach this. Mm-hmm. Because the interesting thing was when you hear B-15 and Mobius discussing, they're like, oh, did he do it? Why? It's like, what's he doing? The dialogue is meant to go, oh, they're talking about Loki. Mm. And then as Loki runs up, no, they're not talking about Loki because they don't know who Loki is. Mm-hmm. They're talking about He Who Remains. Yeah. Or whoever that statue is.
Somebody. Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah.
So, because all of the branch timelines are going crazy at that point.
Mm. I think the only reason I want it to be the multiverse is because we mentioned the rug being pulled out so often by Marvel on this multiverse thing. They've mentioned that they incorporated it in Spider-Man. They've incorporated it in WandaVision as a concept that there is multiverse. And then they've just pulled the rug every time. But finally here, if we don't get Loki going to another universe instead of going back in time, then they've done it again effectively. That's the only reason I want it. So I'm hoping that it's just, he's gone to another universe. He has to work his way back over to our universe to finish this fight in season 2 or something.
Well, that's it. And as well, I guess if there's only one TVA, that's the question. Are there other TVAs in other, because if they're determining the sacred timeline, it's only this authority.
So the TVA exists outside of time and space. They sit in the limbo.
But then the statue on offer is of He Who Remains. Mm-hmm. So is he the robot pretending to, and it is the 3 timekeepers that are at the edge of time in this one?
The question
is it that it's completely different, where He Who Remains doesn't sit on the edge of time directing it? He is there because there's not this. So I mean, this is just like, there's a lot of different permutations here. So
the world is open.
No wonder they got season 2, or I guess how it will maybe play out within or through different parts of the movies.
All just theories right now. Hopefully we'll get more information as we go through all the rest of the movies, exactly as you're saying. Anything else we do know about this episode? Any notes that you want to bring up about this episode?
Just a very quick one. The fact that we now have He Who Remains, and potentially his variation of Kang the Conqueror, means the young Avenger, Iron Lad, who is a variant himself, a younger version of Kang and Immortus and He Who Remains, is on the table. And we have been seeing that across all of these episodes and films. We're seeing the potential introduction of Young Avengers, with WandaVision and what the Hawkeye coming up. We are seeing these introductions. Yep. So Miss Marvel. It's going to be interesting. I think potentially the door is now opened for an Iron Lad, which is brilliant.
Like we had Kid Loki last week, maybe another Young Avenger.
Yes.
This team sounds as big as the Avengers. The more it goes on, the more people I hear are on this team that I never heard of before. Excellent stuff. Anything from you, John?
No notes from me.
Excellent. So overall, do you defend the season finale of Loki, episode 6, for all time, always? John?
Yeah, I really do. Love this episode. Really defend this episode of Loki. I give this 4.5 apples at the edge of time out of 5. I just really liked Jonathan Majors here. I just liked all the different permutations and connections, whether it's to the movies, whether it's to season 2. Certainly, that was a big thing, because I think I haven't really discussed it much, but it was a bit of a jolt at the end. And I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't know there was going to be a season 2.
Yeah.
Didn't even know the rumors. And actually I was thinking, okay, well then what is the end credit? And we have had one earlier. And so I was thought, the camera was going to pan out from that document after the stamp had gone down. And then obviously it releases and it's season 2. So it's like, okay, fine. That's perfect. And I guess 1.1 season will potentially filter into parts of these upcoming movies that are happening as well. 1.2, depending on how many touchstones it does with the movies before the season 2. So, I really, really liked this for sure. I thought Jonathan Majors was outstanding. Love him. I think he's really good. I do defend this 4.5 apples at the edge of time out of 5.
Excellent.
Chris, do you defend this episode of Loki?
I do. It was definitely a choice. And it was a bold choice. It was a bold move, Cotton. And it kind of paid off. The interesting thing is that I don't know if we'll get this next year. The continuation of this next year. So it is a even bolder move when you've got a 2-year gap, potentially. Like 18 months gap between 2 seasons. This is a choice they've made, and it seems like it will pay off. It's also, as John said, and as Derek, as you said, every rumor, every permutation, and every theory was both correct and incorrect at the same time. Yeah. So everyone got their cake and everyone got to eat it.
Will people see it like that, or will they look at it the other way around and go, it wasn't exactly right?
So that's the question. And I honestly don't think it's an issue. I think this was clever writing, and what I would have preferred, and I'm just going to say, my only preference would have been another episode. Maybe not even a full episode, just another episode where we get to see a bit more with Mobius and Judge Renslayer, a bit more with B-15. Because what we essentially got was 12 angry men in a single room stage play with a couple bits of sprinkle outside of that. Where I just wanted a bit more, like we didn't get enough B-15. We didn't get enough Mobius. And we're going to get that in season 2. That's fine. I just would have preferred to see that a bit more of the wider play. So that's where I'm going with the extra 20 minutes, where they surprise us with, here's your extra variant scene, and it's kind of whatever you could have come up with anything. So yes, I completely defend it. It's just a bold move, and I'm going to interested to see if it pays off. Derek, do you defend this episode?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I really, really thought it was a great ending to a first season. Something we haven't seen before from the MCU. We've never seen a first season of a show going into a second season. We've seen WandaVision, a first standalone show. We've seen Falcon the Winter Soldier, which is becoming Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the movie. We that's the way they've set that up. WandaVision going into Doctor Strange. We have this now going into a second season. This is how they do it. There are choices when you do a first season of a show. It's, let's leave a massive cliffhanger so they come back for the second season, or let's tie up the story and give a little touch to what season 2 is going to be like. And the way they chose to do it was cliffhanger. But with, I thought, an excellent episode. I love Jonathan Majors throughout this episode, the introduction of him in here, what it means for the universe, and all the theories that we can talk about from now until we actually get some of them confirmed, when things happen down the line. I think that's a great way to do this show. And wow, did it look stunning. John, you already mentioned, how amazing the Citadel itself looked, and the effects that were used at the beginning of the episode and throughout, I thought were really, really top quality. It looked like a movie every week for the most part. Really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, definitely defend this episode. Let's go on to the pub for our final pub quiz question. John, what's the pub quiz question for episode 6?
Yes, fellow quizzers, fellow defenders, it is question 6 of the pub quiz. The question is, how many sugars does Loki take in his coffee at the Citadel at the end of time? So, fellow defenders, answers through the usual channel of feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. Send in your answer to question 6, as well as if you are building them all up and sending them in one batch, then you can send your answers to questions 1 to 6 there. We'll be doing the draw at the end of our wrap-up episode next week. So make sure to get your answers in before the 21st of July next week, and you'll be in with a chance to get your hands on some Loki goodies. You can head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com/Loki pub quiz to see the range of goodies that the person who's pulled out of the hat is voiced by Google in her selection there. Which of the 4 Funko Pops on offer, or which 3 of the 4 Funko Pops on offer you would like to receive and display in all their TVA glory.
Yes, I think because of the secrecy around the show, we mentioned earlier on in the season that the Loki merchandise has been a lot slower coming out than all the rest of the shows we had so far. So we're giving you a choice. Whoever is the winner of the pub quiz gets their choice of 3 Loki Funko Pops. Details over on the website, tvpodcastindustry.com. There's a link. Pop on in there. It has all 6 of the questions that we have for Loki season 1. John, do you want to give a recap of the questions really quick before we get into our feedback? Let's give a recap of the 6 questions we have for our Loki pub quiz.
If I must. Loki episode 1, Glorious Purpose question. What speed is Loki moving at after being clobbered by Hunter B-15 in the Gobi Desert?
Mm-hmm.
For episode 2, the variant question. When was Kablooey chewing gum sold? Loki episode 3 Lamentis question. Loki and Sylvie are taking the train to the Ark, but where on Lamentis 1 is the Ark located? What's the name of the city? Loki episode 4 the Nexus event question. Before returning to Sylvie, Hunter B-15 sees a poster on the wall. What does it ask, and what is the answer? For episode 5 the Journey into Mystery question. How many Lokis do we see in this episode in the void at the end of time? And finally, just a recap of, for all time, always question from this episode. How many sugars does Loki take in his coffee in the Citadel at the end of time?
There are some difficult questions in there. You have until the 21st. If you put in an answer that you don't think is correct, you still have time to update those answers before the 21st of July. Just email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And let's pop on over to check in with the listeners and get some feedback on Loki, the final episode.
Yes, first up, we had email from Jerry. He goes, "Hey guys, let's start with another haiku for Chris. Kang the Conqueror, Sylvie becoming Loki. Phase 4 has begun."
Well done, Jerry.
Well, that's perfect.
You missed last week's haiku from Jerry, Chris. So thanks, Jerry, for repeating that. That's really good of you.
Thank you so much. Jerry goes on to say, "Holy crap, we got Kang the Conqueror. What a great way to present the character to all the casual MCU fans. Jonathan Majors is great casting. The smug banter from Kang is brilliant. Telling Loki and Sylvie his history and all the timelines, the 3 choices he gives the couple is indeed the heart of the matter. Kang confirming to everyone, we're all villains here. Loki understands what Kang is saying. Some variant worse than him will take his place. Then Sylvie and Loki kiss. She says the ironic phrase, but I'm not you. She betrays Loki and kills Kang and royally screws up everything, thus becoming a Loki herself. What a great cliffhanger, everything's changed. What a great episode of Doctor Who, I mean Loki. I predicted the Marvel Phase 4 was a multiverse war. I also thought we would get a season 2. I now think we'll get 4 seasons and wrap up Phase 4 in an Avengers movie or a Fantastic Four movie. Oh yeah! Now that this has happened, the What If series will make more sense to casual MCU fans. One more thing, Kang helping Renslayer escape, so true to the comics. Can't wait to hear your thoughts, Jerry in Niceville. Thanks so much, Jerry. Yeah, definitely. The second all of this happened at the end, I went, oh, this is the What If. This is perfect. Like
now people will understand What If. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's literally, What If is essentially our next MCU property on Disney Plus, starting in the middle or end of August, about a month from now.
August 11th. Yep.
Oh yeah, so literally a month from now. Way.
Yeah, the brand new animated show, taking a look at the MCU and what would be different, if certain things were changed in the MCU. But I think I think Jerry's right. That'll make so much more sense after seeing, this episode of Loki. Loving all the 4s there, Jerry. There'll be 4 seasons of Loki, which will wrap up phase 4 with a Fantastic Four movie. All the 4s. I love it.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Also over an email, Coffee and Vodka says, greetings remaining defenders. Do you appreciate all the exposition you can get about the MCU's version of timey-wimey timelines? Have you always wanted to see a darker ending of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? If you answered yes to both of these questions, then you, like me, very much enjoyed this episode. Turns out He Who Remains is the Kang who remains standing atop the dead Kang pile. Is that a statue of Loki's reincarnated host, or another Kang at the end of the show? The setup for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is checked off the list, as well as the introduction of the villain in Quantumania. Fine cliffhangers all around for all the cast of Loki Season 2. All in all, a tidy ending. Finally, I look forward to the next bestseller, Love Yourself the Loki Way. See you, gentlemen, on whatever next series is covered, hopefully before Doom Patrol Season 3. As always, take care, and thanks for all you do, Coffee and Vodka. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka.
Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. And yes, essentially that is potentially the best title for the book, and I want to read that book.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Loved the author of your book as well, by CRISPR. You definitely need a bit of genetic alteration, to love yourself, the Loki way. Great stuff. Victor on email says, hail, Derek, John, Chris, and fellow defenders. Wow. I've much to say regarding this finale, and I will start with 2 words, Jonathan Majors. His performance had me on the edge of my seat. Mm-hmm. I could not have been more impressed if Dr. Doom himself showed up. Indeed. I think I would be with you there, Victor. I'm eager to see Jonathan as various iterations of Kang. I feel everything about this finale, from opening montage to musical score, was very dynamic. The appearance of Miss Minutes in the Citadel was mildly surprising and very funny. When Sylvie kissed Loki, I was convinced she would kill He Who Remains. But what is Sylvie going to do now? Wait for another Kang to appear? Ravonna is off to seek free will. Her comics version had a history with Kang. Loki might not want to tell all to Mobius in the Kang TVA. Mm-hmm. Might we get some idea of the newly born multiverse in the upcoming What If series? As always, I am looking forward to your podcasts and Defenders feedback. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Yes, I think, I do like the Kang TVA. I think that would be, it's not vowels, it's Kangs. I think, What If just takes on a whole new meaning, with this. In one, can you imagine, a universe with Marvel zombies? Mm-hmm. Yes, that would be even probably worse than The Walking Dead, I guess.
We'll see it next month, though, John. It's going to be awesome.
I can't wait. I love Marvel zombies, but space traveling, interstellar zombies in one universe.
It's gonna be fun.
I certainly wouldn't be holidaying in that universe, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would last very long if that was the case.
Unless I felt like a little nibble. But yeah, no, definitely not.
I love the idea of Sylvie sitting at the Citadel at the end of time, just waiting for new Kangs or new He Who Remains turning up and just beheading them one by one. Creating her own Kang pile of corpses, effectively. Just that's her revenge. She's gonna sit here and kill anyone that comes through that door. I love that idea.
Yeah, I do like your use of Kang here, Victor. It's like, will we get Kang Coca-Cola maybe, or as I say, maybe King Kang, as well. All these different versions, sort of a gorilla Kang, I guess.
You never know. Thanks so much, Victor.
Thank you so much, Victor. We next up have an email from Storm, who went, "Hey guys, I really enjoyed the podcast. Sad that it's over along with the series, but was delighted to see that there will be, as rumoured, a season 2. I really enjoyed the final episode. Big revelations, but so much unresolved. I hope we don't have to wait too long to see more. Interesting that it currently seems like the advocates of free will and the right to choose, i.e. the Lokis, Mobius and B-15, might be in the wrong, and the moral of the story is that we are all better off with a benevolent dictator. I look forward to seeing if that and Renslayer are proved correct, as it's looking pretty likely right now. While I enjoyed the fight between Sylvie and Loki, it was sad, if fitting, to see Sylvie show her true Loki colours, choosing revenge over companionship and love. Perhaps she just wasn't as into it as our Loki, and didn't fancy spending an eternity with a version of herself with a crush on her. Slightly surprised they actually went there with the kiss, thought things might stay at an awkward blanket level. Hopefully the two will be reunited in season 2. I like to think Sylvie might come and find Loki now she has completed her life's purpose of revenge. Will this betrayal set our Loki back in terms of trust? I hope not. Also sad to see Mobius B-15 not remembering Loki. Clearly Marvel's not over kicking him when he's down. Does this mean Loki's in another branch of the multiverse where they've never met? Hopefully multiverse means more variant Lokis to come. Will be interesting to see how this plays out into the wider MCU, undoubtedly to be picked up in Doctor Strange. And wasn't there something kind of Sanctum-like about the styling of Kang, He Who Remains layer and outfit? But I wonder where else. Thanks for the chat, guys. Storm. Thank you so much for that, Storm. And yeah, there was definitely, I was getting Sanctorum-like vibes, but I will let our strange aficionado discuss that more than I will.
Yes, yeah, it definitely had that vibe, I guess, with all the dark interior, and with the round window behind him. And even just his tempad as well, that round dial, just, I guess, that's the thing, with Kang, is that his, like, little symbol that's on that tempad, that almost like cracked face of it, because it was running all the way through the building as well. And whether that was just something to do with the different, maybe it's scars from branching timelines previously that hit the Citadel at the edge of time or whatever, but certainly, yeah, it certainly felt Sanctum-esque, for sure.
Yeah, see that. Thanks so much, Storm, for your thoughts about the episode. Really good of you to listen along with us, and hope you've been enjoying it. Show's not over. We will be over on tvpodcastindustries.com with even more podcasts, and specifically Marvel. Lots more to talk about for Marvel this year.
Yeah, thanks so much, Storm.
We also got an email in from Chloe H12. Chloe says, "Hello, sorry I forgot to write it for the 5th episode. Been busy with theatre camp about a Minotaur, War and Blood, but I have been able to listen to your podcast and watch Loki. Here are 4 points of what I thought of it. Number 1, I liked how the Marvel intro every time a superhero showed up with their voiceover. Very cool. 2, I found it just creepy and weird when Miss Minutes showed up in the castle and was like, hi, it's not totally creepy to show up talking about He Who Remains. I never liked that clock. 3, the He Who Remains guy was not as cool as I thought he would be, because I thought he'd be somebody else. But still, I guess in a way he was cool. My mom said it was her favourite part though, and loves that actor, but I have no idea who he is. Number 4, I liked how the post-credit scene said Loki will be back for season 2, but besides the creepy clock and He Who Remains, I liked the episode a lot, and I'm looking forward to season 2. From Chloe, age 12 years old. Chloe also included another photograph of her dog, Happy Harlem. Gorgeous picture.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Chloe, for that. And if you don't like this variation of this character, if you're not a big fan, because he's not as cool as you think, there's going to be plenty more. And I guess, that will be coming on their way in this multiple, variant filled, range of different universes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Great to hear from you, Chloe. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks again, Chloe. Over on Twitter, Matt Murdoch says, what a lovely tie-in for you guys to have Jonathan Majors revealed as He Who Remains just shortly after Lovecraft Country gets 18 Emmy noms. He was fantastic, an episode of nothing but exposition. It was basically a writer's room meeting. Sets everything up for the rest of Phase 4. Loved it. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, in the way that they describe WandaVision, was directly connected in with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I guess because of the more secrecy around this, I feel this connects in even more so, as well, or at least, to that same level to Multiverse of Madness, but also, as you say, just that wider scale of the rest of Phase 4
Absolutely.
As well. So yeah, great stuff.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Over on our Facebook group, over at facebook.com/groups/TV podcast industries, we got some further feedback. First up, it's Greg Schwab. He says, oh my god, 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 oh my god. I may have added an extra oh my god there in that one, Greg. I think I'm more excited by the possibilities of what is coming after Loki than I was after either WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The possibilities are endless, no pun intended. I think that knowing that Jonathan Majors is cast as Kang spoils this a little, since that title was never used in the episode, but I love the idea of the benevolent, all-knowing dictator, and his explanation throws me back to the show Sliders, if versions or variants of Quinn were power-hungry.
Yes.
And Jonathan Majors was awesome in this role. His delivery was perfect as the old, tired defender who is finally willing to channel his inner Elsa and let it go and let the cards fall as they may. And season 2, I cannot wait. Yes, I think we can say Jonathan Majors is a fellow defender, even if a little tired, and old because of his protection of the sacred timeline.
There you go.
Greg finishes with, not sure why this excites me as much as it does, and I can see how some people could be disappointed in this ending, but my mind is spinning with the possibilities, and I can't wait to hear you guys talk about it. Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. I think that's it. It's the true cliffhanger, in every sense of the word, but not just for season 2, but also for a number of the upcoming movies, because you have the tie to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange is in the next Spider-Man movie. Yep. There's just so much. There's the whole, the Young Avengers having been teased through WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and now with the many variants of Kang that are possible with Iron Kid, and as Chris mentioned. So this is just like, you could salivate over the possibilities, really. And of course, we've got the time to watch it all play out and see where this imagination goes. So yeah, thanks so much, Greg.
Yes, thanks so much, Greg. And we'll be salivating all over the podcasts with our theories over the next umpteen months and years until we get season 2. Also over on Facebook, we got some feedback from Kay Patterson, who said, cliffhanger, you monsters. I added the dramatic flair. I know the multiverse had to happen, and had a hunch Sylvie was too far gone to not rashly get revenge somehow, as justified as her feelings were. But Loki trapped at the TVA with a Mobius who doesn't know him? That was a gut punch. He's alone in a Sam Beckett hell with nothing but his wits and a broken heart. Poor guy. He's gonna need his own 24/7 dedicated psychiatrist when this is all over. Overall, I was thinking about how it would be nice if someone besides the Simpson had called out that Loki has been subjected to some awful parenting and his feelings of being pushed aside and his interests and talents not appreciated by his father were justified, even if he acted on them poorly. But they could have been a starting point for some genuine healing, even with the interrogation room speed chess psychoanalysis that they did for plot reasons. Just a one-line acknowledgement. The throne room scene with a King Loki, a fake spoiler from Marvel? A very Loki thing to do. I'm impressed. Cannot wait for season 2. Thanks so much for that feedback, Kay. And yeah, no, that is one of the true Marvel-y Loki things to do. You're right. That in a lot of the promo shots and the materials and the trailers, there was a King Loki throne room scene where Loki is in full Odin regalia and is standing atop the dais and with his arms out, and it was everything, and that's why so many rumors thought that the He Who Remains would be actually revealed to be King Loki or a variant of Loki. The head of the TVA was going to be a Loki. And that was just never there. It was in none of the
Interesting. I
scenes.
never saw that. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's really good. I can see how people would mistake that for a spoiler as well. Kay's referencing the Simpsons, the Good, the Bart, and the Loki, kind of I'd say it's 8 minutes long, but it's probably only about 3 minutes long, kind of, where it incorporates all of the Avengers characters and has a visit from Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston in this little short that was up on Disney, last week. Bit of fun, to drop into. It's kind of just interesting seeing, your favorite Simpsons characters drawn as Avengers and Marvel characters. Check it out. It's a bit of fun. Thanks so much, Kay.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you
thanks.
so much, Kay. And just for everyone else, Sam Beckett is from Quantum Leap, if you are too young to understand the Sam Beckett reference.
Yes, we have a Sliders reference from Greg and a Quantum Leap reference from Kay. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, thanks so
Loving it.
much, Kate. Heather Wallace says, I deliberately kept away from casting news, so I didn't know who this was until he referred to himself as a conqueror. Right, I said to myself, it's Kang. As soon as the snippets of voices from the MCU film started, I knew this would be a special episode, and it didn't disappoint. I did cringe a bit at Loki and Sylvie locking lips, but it's an interesting way to introduce love for Loki. No one wants to see Tom Hiddleston's Loki with a love interest. We all want to be the love interest, so having him fall for a version of himself keeps the peace.
There you go.
Yep, I'm looking forward to season 2. Exactly, I think that's totally right, Heather, and really good feedback. You know, not only did they keep everyone happy by having the right people sat in the Citadel at the edge of time, but also they've kept Loki single. Exactly.
Yeah, and as we said before, to quote RuPaul, if you can't love yourself, how are you able to love anybody else? So that's a slightly Irish twist on RuPaul. Thanks so much for that, Heather. Donald Dennis says, how will it end? Apparently it won't. Alan Thomas says, this finale was reasonably diverting. I was never bored and had a nice creepy final scene. There were many funny moments in the series, although the vast majority were in the pilot. Still my favourite episode by far, and conversely almost no humour in the finale. And there were some nice character beats. But I remain steadfast in my belief that the actual plot, world-building, mythology of this show does not make a lick of sense. It appears the sacred timeline really was an actual thing, yet there was not just a female Loki, but also an alligator Loki and a frog Thor, none of whom were pruned in infancy, or better yet in utero, and I hope this nonsensicality is not going to affect the rest of the MCU, or I will find myself checking out. I'll add that even aside from my specific issues regarding coherence or lack thereof, there's a broader peril in what they are doing. Free will versus predestination is a great, fascinating subject for a standalone science fiction movie or show. I highly recommend Alex Garland's miniseries Devs on Hulu for this reason, but it's a problematic way to approach an overarching framing story for a cinematic universe that plays out over a number of films and series in which predestination is not the subject. I say that because it robs the other stories of stakes. Every time we saw heroes saving the world or even the universe, perhaps by some noble personal sacrifice, there was nothing really on the line. If the heroes had failed to play their expected parts, some technicians of the TVA would have flagged it, field agents would have been sent out, perhaps bringing back Infinity Stones as paperweights, the timeline would have been reset and everyone could hang up their gear and in their lockers and go and get a salad at the cafeteria or have a drink in Ramona's office, or maybe even go out to karaoke night at a pub, calling a TVA Uber that comes in one of those flying cars and visible out the TVA windows, but which we never saw anyone actually use. Interesting take, Alan. I would like to have seen somebody in one of those taxis. I'm sure they were just used for taking people home from late nights of work at the TVA. It's an interesting debate, and I'm not too sure whether they went into it in depth enough to really inform an opinion about whether it's about predestination. It's about one guy controlling a timeline that he wants to protect, and if someone does anything that pushes the timeline to the point of a multiversal war, that's why they're being pruned. So I don't think it's about every single person has no decision in their life and everything is predestined. It's about if those choices that are made massively affect the timeline and push it towards a multiversal war, then he makes the decision to prune them from that timeline. So I think there's individual choice here and there. So the idea of not pruning Lokis the minute they're born, the reason for that is because it's only when they get to a point when they've done something that may affect the timeline. That's when they are found and taken out of the timeline. Is that your understanding as well, guys?
Yeah, I took it that way. I can completely see where Alan's coming from in this
Yeah.
this direction and this feeling. The one thing I will say though is you only get a feeling of no stakes your second viewing of a film.
Exactly.
Because the first film, like, it can go any direction.
Yeah.
So that same predestination theoretically is always going to be there because you've already seen the film once already.
Yeah.
So part of that predestination is you knowing the actual destination. We're getting very meta here. What I'm trying to say is you are the one who is in charge of the sacred timeline because you are watching the films and therefore you know where the destination is going at the end of the destination of your second viewing.
Kinda, but remember in the MCU we did have Doctor Strange putting up his finger and going, there's only one decision that can be made here to solve Endgame. He is effectively saying that we have to go down this path or else we will not save the universe from Thanos. So we have already had this before in the universe, this idea that only one way to go. And proclaimed by Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different and the same because we're also talking about multiverses as well as time. So it's time and space now. It's not just about time like in Endgame. I think Alan, like Chris, I can see your point. I think the predestination about it is that nothing matters because it was predestined that they can pull this one out. And I guess that effectively, and we know this from the comics, no one ever dies in the MCU kind of thing or in Marvel Comics. So I guess it's whether bringing, that into for a cinema audience, I guess. And I guess when you're doing this long form, this is where it all changes it up. But I think, well, we did mention it, I think earlier on in Loki. I think it came through from some feedback, I think, from Ryan about the idea that the timeline's actually a rope so that there are many threads within that and that, there could be a number of different choices within that timeline. And I think, we talked about, I think I mentioned about confidence, intervals or whatever, that within that timeline there is free choice, but it's the perspective that you're seeing from this idea of outside of it. So, like a celestial or an eternal, that they see it as predestined. So, but yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because I think that possibly is a concern for sure. Yeah.
And definitely, Alan, definitely want to say, your recommendation for Devs, it was excellent. Really enjoyed Devs. Really good stuff. Also on Facebook, Jamie Lawton says, what freaks me out is that on the strength of your various podcasts, I started watching Lovecraft Country yesterday. Now I feel that I'm a variant on a timeline controlled by you guys.
We are the ones who remain.
We are the three timekeepers or podcast keepers
of the TVPI podcast.
We need we need to do one of those images like we did for the boys and Umbrella Academy, but this time we need some kind of like lizardy sort of look to our face, for sure. Thanks so much, Jamie.
I'm sure Instagram has a filter for that.
Yeah, I think so. Ronaldo says, what a finale. And though it will most likely not astonish the non-comic book readers, this is big for all who knows Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. I was initially slightly off-put by Majors' interpretation of Kang, but I now realize he's not the Kang we're all expecting. A more devious, evil, and ruthless version is on the way, thanks to Sylvie, and I just cannot wait. I hung on every word Majors delivered, and I seriously was in such a headspin. I really didn't know which way this finale was headed, but I have to say, this sets things up beautifully. Again, I'm not sure this would have the same impact to those who are unfamiliar with Kang, but I hope it doesn't alienate them for what I thought was a great, if not unexpected, finale. Absolutely, Ronaldo. I think totally there with you around not really being slightly on board, slightly put off, like you say, around Kang, as I mentioned, because you're expecting something different. But yes, there will be wave after wave of multiversal Kangs, I guess, in whatever form that they will come in. And certainly, I think, Majors, Jonathan Majors was just literally so good in this. And I think, I'm so glad to have covered Lovecraft Country, where he is also just phenomenal.
Such a good show.
Yeah. So big thanks, Ronaldo.
Yep, thanks so much, Ronaldo. We also had some feedback from Mark Kirkman, who said, I thought it was really good. A lot of what we were witnessing was this branch timeline that Loki and Sylvie were in. There are multiple timelines with the TVA within it as well. That is where we will see our Loki go to when Sylvie opened up that portal with Kang's time band. Love that we got the intro to Kang within the MCU here. Jonathan Majors was awesome with a version of Kang. I love that they give his take on how it all happened without him saying his name as well. Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. And yeah, pretty much that. Like, again, he does not introduce himself outside of He Remains. He goes, I was a conqueror, I was XYZ. It's really fantastic take on that.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Mark, over in your own podcast. Looking forward to that. Thanks so much. Richard Blaze says, wow, there doesn't seem to be ironically enough time to write about the series. We would need eons to dissect it all. I managed to keep off reading anything about the show for the past few weeks. Footy Kick provided me with a decent distraction, and so glad I managed to avoid the spoilers. This show I have loved since the very first moment, and the finale was probably not what people were expecting. Calmer, less bang bang, fighty. I found just as intriguing as all the others before it. I missed Lovecraft Country. It's on my watch list, but Jonathan Majors appears to be an outstanding actor. His portrayal was comedic, heartwarming, sincere, but had enough maniacal menace when he needed to turn it on. Now, I may be wrong, often, according to my wife, or just stating the bleeding obvious, but I'm presuming the TVA at the end was from a different universe now, and that's why Loki was again referred to as a variant. My only grumble, the post-credit scene, while elated we did get a season 2, I wanted just a few more precious minutes in their universe to hold on to. Thanks so much, Richard. A lot of feelings that I have as well. Yeah, I think a really, really good episode, but it felt short, didn't it? It felt like we needed a little bit more, a couple more minutes. 42 minutes again for the final episode. So they are really playing with this format on their episodes, where some episodes are close to an hour and some episodes closer to half an hour at times. I'm really glad you enjoyed it there, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard. And I really think, like I said, that 20 minutes would have been amazing. We also got some feedback from Celine Kisler, who said, what's to come from this for Marvel is very exciting, but this ending and series on its own is very unsatisfying. This episode had a 47-minute runtime, and about 35 of those minutes were just 3 people in a room talking. Setup anticipation matter. I prefer it not to be the primary excitement for an individual season of a TV or movie. One thing I will give credit to Marvel for is that they did something that not only have I never seen, but I've never thought of. They've introduced a character in a TV show via a casting announcement for a movie. Thanks so much, Salim. I think I'm speaking for all of us. I think we all enjoyed the kind of 3 people in a room talking format. It's something we've never really seen, but I do understand where you're coming from. Some people prefer more of that. It just, personally, and this, I love this format, this style, as this ending. It was very raw and emotional and just a unique take.
It's something we've not seen in the Marvel shows, but we've certainly seen it before. We're 3 people in a room talking, Chris.
Yes. Virtually. 2 degrees.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Salim.
Yeah, thanks, Salim. AJ Ebersol says, wow, what an amazing episode. At first, I felt like it was going to drag on, but this was a perfect ending. I'm not too knowledgeable about the comics, but when He Who Remains said he is known as a conqueror, is that Kang the Conqueror? Mm-hmm. Also, it seemed like He Who Remains didn't put up much of a fight. I know he said it will be because he will end up right back where he is. I think there is more to it, though. I think he lied again. He knew what was going to happen. He knew Sylvie was going to kill him. What a heartbreaking moment when Loki realized that Mobius didn't recognize him, especially after that moment they shared in the last episode. But wow, what a way to announce a second season. Thanks, AJ. Yeah, I mean, certainly Sylvie really doesn't believe Kang at all. You know, she calls him out as a liar. You're lying again. So, again, it was just some of the intricacies of what is said in this room. You just never know with Marvel how they may inform or at least be used to describe something either in season 2 or something further down the line or in some of the movies. Who knows? But certainly it was Kang the Conqueror. Yes, you are right there as well. So thanks so much for your feedback there, AJ.
Absolutely. Thanks, AJ. We got a few voicemails in on this episode as well. First up, Brandy Lee Sanderson sent us in her thoughts.
I just wanted to say, in a show about Loki, the god of mischief, it is so fitting that the finale had all these twists and turns about who the big bad was. When Miss Minutes name dropped He Who Remains, I was happy because I didn't want it to be another Loki. I felt that would be a disservice not only to the story they were telling, but also to the character growth that we had seen in Loki twice now. But I also have to admit that I was a little bit disappointed. Not because I was craving Kang in any way, but I felt like He Who Remains would kind of end up being a throwaway character, and I wasn't sure how they were going to move forward with it. But then here comes Jonathan Major plot twist, and he is He Who Remains, but is he projecting Kang's face in some type of Ralph Boner-like prank on the audience? No, he's just the Kang Who Remains, and this is why I love the MCU.
Thanks so much, Brandy. Jonathan Major plot twist. That is potentially the best title for this actor ever, and that is all we shall dub him going forward. It is approved. It is decided. That is his name. Going forward, well done.
Totally brilliant. Totally brilliant. And yes, this is exactly why we love the MCU as well. Brandy sent in a second voicemail with just some more thoughts about the episode too.
Before Loki aired, I had been craving a scene with Loki and his mother that was going to be similar to the one that Thor got in Endgame. Then I found myself wondering why I wasn't disappointed we never got that scene. And it could be because episode 1 had that impactful moment where Loki realizes that his actions played a part in her death. But I think it has more to do with the fact that the character growth that we see within this series directly ties back to the fact that Loki realizes that who he is and who he wants to be does not have to be who he's supposed to be, which is a great callback to what Frida tells Thor in Endgame. It does kind of make the ending of this season so much sadder for me because Loki is alone. Everybody that he loves and cares for either doesn't remember him, didn't trust him and then betrayed him, or doesn't know he's alive. And it makes that scene that he had with Lady Sif in episode 4 all the more heartbreaking because you realize that that is what his fear has been all along. And here he's put himself out there and he's still alone. I don't know if he'll find that at least he tried or if it'll make him revert a little bit, but I'm interested to find out.
Thanks, Brandy. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether he does revert. I suppose that's like, we talked so much, or I can say I talked so much about the character growth from in episode 1 to the end of episode 1 and beyond of the Loki that they took from post-Avengers to who had no interactions and none of the character growth, and how they grew him very quickly and beyond where we were as a character of Loki when he died. It would be a shame to see, but him revert. But I think it's going to be, you know, that old adage, better to love and lost than never loved at all.
Maybe.
Hopefully, maybe they go down that route. Or they turn him evil. That'd be amazing.
Or turn him back to being a villain, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we did hear from He Who Remains that all 3 of them in that room are villains, and he's seen a lot more of them than we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think, like, as Chris said, totally sort of in agreement with about just as you say, Brandy, just how heart-wrenching it is that he's been on this development to, you know, to really kind of make him a more rounded individual, but he's ultimately left on his own in a place where people don't know him and effectively rejected, or at least used by the one person who he did think he had something special with.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Brandy. We've also got a voicemail in from Dr. Bob Phillips.
Hello, this is Bob. Thank you, Derek, Chris and John, for another wonderful podcast from TV Podcast Industries, the home of the greatest TV commentaries that ever exist. This is some feedback about the mid-season finale of Loki. Because frankly, that can't be the end. We're 6 episodes in, but we need another 6, and we need them preferably to come next week anyway. If they don't, then we'll just have to wait as the multiverse spreads out of control with some extremely evil character at the heart of it who we don't yet know or understand. And it's all just incredibly tense. It was an absolutely thrilling finale that left more questions to me than answers. I'm sure that knowing the backstory of the unspoken characters, the way that these interleave into old comic book things, will get you even more excited than a completely naive viewer like myself. But this is definitely an exceptional way forwards. I'm really looking forward to listening to your podcast, but also to seeing when they bring out what they'll probably call Season 2, but should really be called Season 1B. Let's face it, it's basically a bit Doctor Who, isn't it? Thanks again for everything you do. It is a wonderful thing.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bob. It's a wonderful thing you do as well. Great to have a voicemail in from you and on Loki. I think it's useful to call it the mid-season finale, isn't it? Just going to be 2 or 3 years between this and that.
Exactly.
It kind of feels like those old days of Gotham, John. Remember when they used to do like 3 episodes and then have a break for 5 weeks and then a break for 6 months? You'd be going,
Definitely.
what character is that again?
And it is also, to his point, very Doctor Who-y. I mean, and I hope it isn't 2 years, because with Doctor Who, there's times where I'm like, I have to watch like about the last 13 episodes to remember where I am, because it's been so long since the next episode. So, in that regard, it really is Doctor Who-y.
God, this
for sure.
Jodie Whittaker era, specifically of Doctor Who, the current Doctor, where it's been like Christmas of 2019, I think, the last time we saw it, or New Year's Day 2019.
I know.
And then they're going to come out with an episode here and there over the rest of the next couple of years. Yeah, I can't keep up. I need some tightness, some more episodes, please.
It's certainly not that bad, but definitely, as Bob says, there are just so many questions here, and it really is just very, very tantalizing. And we may not necessarily get season 2 so soon, but I guess there will be some answers within this schedule coming through on the MCU.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks,
Yes.
Bob.
Thanks, Bob. And just surprisingly, Tom Hiddleston is in London right now, where he lives, which helps. But he is in London right now, where we do know the Pinewood Studios is, where we do know they filmed season 1. Just putting that out there. Who knows? Maybe it'll come quicker. We don't know. It's going to be a while.
And next Wednesday it suddenly drops out of the blue. 6 more episodes.
Or maybe that's where Judge Renslayer went.
There you go.
That's just to really sharpen up season 2, but it will be with us sooner than we think.
There you go. She's
Yes.
bringing it back from the future with her. Thanks
better.
so much, Dr. Bob. We also have a voicemail in from Ryan.
Guys, I don't know what to say, but oh my God, that was an episode. That was epic. I watched it last night and I'm still absolutely buzzing from it. So happy with what they've given us. This is exactly what we've been waiting for all this time. The multiverse is here. The explanations. We didn't get Mephisto'd. We got Kang. I was wrong, and I'm happy that I'm wrong. I'm not bothered that I was proven wrong. It was amazing. I was blown away. So we went from last week with all the Easter eggs that I was still finding when I watched it the day before. I watched this new one. I've still finding new stuff I didn't see before, and now this episode, which is just wow. I am literally gobsmacked, and it's about 12 hours since I watched it, so I'm still like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to start listening to podcasts and digging up on it. But basically, in a nutshell, Marvel, this was the best for me. Out of all the series, this was the best. And then I think it might have been WandaVision and then Falcon. But either way, this series really did exactly what they said they were going to do. And they really opened up a massive can of worms, which I can't wait for them to explore more. But all in all, I'm pleased. Thanks, Marvel.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good episode, such a good ending. Both massive in scale, yet really intimate with the 12 angry men in a room, as Chris would say. But it was only 3. In fact, it was 2 men and 1 lady. But were they angry? They got angrier as it went on. Definitely Sylvie did.
Yes.
Anyway, enough of that. Totally agree. It's really tantalizing. And I think, it was just amazing. I think one of the things as well I didn't mention before was I love the branching of, I guess, the timeline around the Citadel and just how that really went so chaotic with all the different branches and the branches again off other branches. It was, dare I say it, very tree-like, very river-like happening there. Yeah. So that was just really pretty, though. Really pretty the way it was done. Thanks so much, Ryan, for the voicemail. Yeah, a lot of craziness to come with Marvel.
It feels like they're having a go again at reintroducing Thanos. When they introduced Thanos the first time, it was just a face staring at a screen, basically. And they didn't really know what they were doing with him. Whereas this time they're going, we're going to make a big bad that's going to last over multiple movies and years. How would you introduce him? Oh, you give him an entire episode to sit in a room and tell these people what's going on. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan. And yes, as he said, thanks, Marvel. Next up, we have the final piece of feedback for this finale, for this series of Loki before our wrap-up next week. We have a voicemail from Samuel.
Hey guys, before I get into my thoughts on the episode, I'd like to say, compared to last week's episode, I'm in love with this one. Even with the more Tarantino-esque talky, as Mobius would say, I think it worked amazing, and the pacing was just as great. Also, an add-on, I'd like to say thanks to Ryan for the kind words on last week's episode. It really meant a lot to me. Now, onto this episode, for all time, always, the finale. We're flung into the episode from the get-go as an epic Marvel logo reel, with Marvel movie lines flooding out of the iconic flipbook images. This detail already put me into the multiverse mindset from the get-go, as it felt like the past was being dragged to the future and vice versa. Among the voices, the most prominent ones I heard were "Dance Off, Bro," and "I Can Do This All Day," and many, many more. The actual opening scene of the episode, however, was just as mesmerizing. Did you happen to catch the spaceship in the expanding galaxy sequence? My mind can't even comprehend who or what is piloting that right now. Maybe a future or past hero in the MCU, now stuck at the edge in space and time. This effect of being warped gave me major 2001 Space Odyssey vibes. A brilliant film and a brilliant callback. As we get into the episode, however, I would say we are confronted by Miss Minutes, who is confirmed as a sentient being and back to her fiery self. I loved the little eye roll and angry eyes as she flew away to filter information to Judge Renslayer. The big points of the episode include my He Who Remains theory being somewhat confirmed, along with all the Kang rumours and our Loki theory being moulded into one in mixed incestuous theory of pure brilliance. Talking of incestuous, that Loki and Sylvie kiss though, it made me cringe and very uncomfortable, but his character has found love and that just adds to Tom Hiddleston's Loki arsenal. Brilliant. We also had the highly theorised Loki versus Loki, but instead it was versus Sylvie? Loved it. Onto the WTF what the hell yeah moment of the episode. Jonathan Majors as Kang? He's here. Although not specifically named, only referred to as He Who Remains and a Conqueror, very on the nose, has already won me over with his portrayal of this spine-tingling, evil, creepy and wacky character from the comics. I can't wait to see more of him and his range when he has the ability to be able to bring multiple versions and personalities of this one character to life. I loved his references to himself as the devil, Maybe meaning we are never getting a Mephisto, or just a big F you from Marvel. Either way, loved it. I also love the depiction of Kang's story, somewhat simplified but also detailed enough for non-Nerd Kings viewers like myself to completely grasp this character's importance. Along with the nod to the Council of Kangs, it perfectly made you be terrified and excited for a new and more evil versions of him to come in the future. And heroic versions, I might have to add. Iron Lad, Young Avengers, anybody? On to my next voice note. Judge Renslayer's blind devotion in this episode to what appears to be, from her perspective, a still faceless person that she has never met 100% sets up her devoted love for Kang in the future editions of the MCU, right? Regarding Sylvie in this episode, I gave her the same reaction as Loki did, while she continuously stated that Kang was lying, an eye roll in sheer frustration, but due to her blinded actions, we now have the multiverse. The battle between the two Lokis was physically well choreographed and an emotionally great ride. The beauty of the breaking timeline at the end gave me genuine goosebumps as so many possibilities began opening before my very eyes and so many characters are on the way. I can't wait to see the repercussions of this in the movies and TV show. On the way, and whether they would be set after or before the events of Loki with regards to Hawkeye and the Eternals. Overall, I'm so excited for the future of the MCU, and it makes me want to go back and reread some of my favourite comic book storylines as they may be appearing in live action at any time. Tom absolutely knocked this role out of the park again the whole season, but today's episode was just on another level. The range of emotions was just chef's kiss. I'm excited at the possibility of so many comic book storylines being adapted to the big screen. Probably Secret Wars now being the most likely, with Kang replacing Doom, allowing Doom to be the big bad in a future phase for a bigger storyline altogether, maybe. Quick question for you guys. With the 3 seasons we have now from Marvel and Disney+, what are your overall rankings? I have Loki and WandaVision fighting over the top spot, with Loki just edging it out, but that may be due to recency bias, so I'll have to watch WandaVision all over again and get back to you guys with a definitive answer. Also, with regards to the end of the episode confirming Season 2, what a tease. Thanks for listening. Thanks for always providing the great content. I'll see you guys Friday with the Bad Batch episode and in the near future with What If. Thanks, Samuel.
Thanks so much for your thoughts, Samuel. I don't know whether we're going to be able to rank our shows yet. I think maybe at the end of the year when we do our end of year wrap up, we have 2 more MCU shows, 3 more MCU shows coming this year with What If, Hawkeye, and Miss Marvel. So I think at the end of the year we can do our rankings of which ones we thought were the best of them, because right now I think all 3 shows have just been very different right now. You know, I love Falcon and Winter Soldier because that's my type of show. I love WandaVision because it was doing something really different, and I love Loki for what it's doing for the universe, but I don't know whether I can compare those 3 of them myself.
How can you compare your favourite children? Well, I suppose anyone with kids probably says you can, but I don't want to go there.
There's always a favourite.
They're all loved equally.
Yeah, I mean, they are just really different, but I guess you put that better, Derek, than I was just thinking. You know, I love WandaVision, absolutely. Really enjoyed what they did with that. But it feels very close to the previous MCU. And I guess that makes sense. And I guess with having Sword and that element to it, there was something for me that makes it still feel closer to the previous movies. Okay. Which is strange to say, I think, but I think maybe it's just its visuals, its tone, rather than what they were trying to do. But it's just simply because it was doing something different. So it's that, for sure. And I saw the spaceship at the start as well, because, that we had mentioned that on the last podcast about it looked like there was at least one. I thought there were like 2 smaller ones as well, like taking off from the Citadel, wondering what on earth. And when we had the recap at the start, there was the spaceship there. So definitely saw that again. Confirmed the sighting of the spacecraft.
UAP.
Yeah.
An unidentified aerial something. I can't remember what the new term instead of a UFO is. Like
any good plane spotter or shuttle spotter or train spotter, you must confirm the sighting. You need
proof.
You need its markings.
Absolutely.
There we are. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fellow defenders, that is the end of our feedback. So thank you so much everyone who has sent in feedback this episode and for the season. We want to hear more from you. What did you, now that you've seen the whole lot, come back to us next week for the wrap up. Give us your thoughts of the season as a whole. We'll see where we are when we get to watch, more than likely, the dissembled or the assembled kind of making of what we expect will be out this day next week.
Exactly.
Yes. Until that point, don't forget, we have also recently put out our Black Widow to spoiler-filled chat, so go on over to all of our usual points, or just head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can find all the links, and it is there. But we are also back later this week to discuss episode 12 of Star Wars The Bad Batch, which is getting very interesting. And I have some thoughts on the last episode.
Excellent.
Because I wasn't there.
Too late, Chris. We've done it.
We've done last week's episode.
You've got to have it on this week's episode.
I only can talk about episode 12. But yes, we will be back for that. And we will be back on August 11th for the next Marvel TV universe, the MCU universe on Disney Plus, the animated series. What if?
Yes, I'm going to just snip that out and use that as our theme tune, Chris. Although we do want people to listen to the podcast, so maybe not. We do know that a lot of our listeners drop off at the end of a season and come back for the next show that they're watching along with us. So if you've joined us for Loki and you're not going to be back until Loki season 2, we'd be disappointed. But thank you so much for joining us for this season. Or if you're joining us tomorrow for The Bad Batch, thanks so much for listening to Loki season. We will talk to you over the weekend, and we will continue to talk to you for the many, many shows that are coming out this year. Thanks so much for all your feedback and all your interaction over the course of this entire season. It's been really good fun hearing what you thought of this mind-bending show.
Yes. Oh, Witcher season 2, December as well. That's going to be in our wrap-up as well, because you could theoretically say The Witcher is now part of the multiverse, because who knows? Everything is part of the MCU multiverse.
But it doesn't need to, Chris, because basically it's got Henry Cavill in a bath. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Again.
As part of the MCU, it might not be.
With less bubbles, hopefully, this time. Yeah, thanks again, fellow defenders, for joining us for another series, our third one this year, of a Marvel TV show. I never thought I would say that again after the Marvel Netflix stuff. But yes, we will be back with our wrap-up episode, and of course we've got What If. But remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending for all time, always.
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 Bye.